When Sonic's rod builders were told to design a rod without any budgetary constraints, they created these. These are the Tournos XD rods. They're real top-of-the-range rods, coming in at around £200. I'm going to run through 3 reasons why they're well worth closer inspection. The first thing I like is the range. It's an uncluttered range. There are so many kart rods out these days that have got multiple variants, but there are just 4 rods in this range. 3 of them are 12-footers. So you've got a 3-pound test curve, a 3.25 and a 3.5. The 13-footer is also a 3.5 if you really want to get big distances and you're a big caster. I've got 3 different rods here. It's quite nice that Sonik have sent 3 different test curves. So I haven't got 3 of the same. I've got the 3, the 3.25 and the 3.5. And behind me I've got an island that's just over about 85 yards range, and I've used the 3.5 to fire solid PVA bags right underneath the sort of tree canopy there. Now the 3.5 is a stiff rod. I did notice that as soon as I took them out of the bag and you're sort of playing with the action, the 3.5 is noticeably stiffer, and it's perfect for that sort of thing. Solid PVA bags at those sorts of ranges. I'm not a huge caster, so that's getting up there with my fairly unaerodynamic PVA bags that around that 85-90 yards range is a decent chuck. Then we've got the 3.25s, which I've also been fishing to the island, but again on a simple lead clip system with a single hook bait. So that's kind of ideal, I've found. With a 3.5 ounce lead, that 3.25 feels really good actually. It doesn't feel like you're overstressing it or yourself during the cast. And in fact, that's probably the rod that I'd pick if I wanted an all-rounder. The 3-pound test curve I've used today, I haven't really stressed it. I've been fishing that at about 40 yards range. So I haven't really given that a good wallop, but again, if you're fishing a fairly small venue, then that 3-pounder is probably the one to go for. So you've got real incremental steps here. It is very noticeable actually when you cast and play with these rods that the 3 is a fairly, you know, modern all-rounder. The 3.25 is very capable, certainly hitting distances. I'd have thought around 100 yards would be pretty easy with a sort of single hook bait. And then you've got the 3.5 if you're casting solid PVA bags, maybe big method feeders and things like that. So it's a big all-round range. It's a good all-round range. It's not a particularly big all-round range, which is what I quite like, that you're not blinded by choice. You've got 3 12-footers and 1 13-footer. Let's talk about the blanks themselves next. Now these are constructed from Toray Japanese carbon. Toray are a Japanese manufacturer of carbon. They're well regarded in the world of sport. Generally they provide carbon for fishing rods, but also for golf clubs and tennis rackets too. So they're one of the best suppliers around. This has got a 1K carbon weave throughout, which is fairly rare. Most carp rods in the fairly mid-range budget are about 3K carbon weave. That's just a lighter carbon weave on the 1K. And these are light rods. They're got a low resin content and they're high modulus carbon rods. And I'll tell you what those 2 little buzzwords mean in a moment. But just picking them up, they feel very light. They've got a nice balance to them, and you can tell that they've been crafted with a bit of care. Now, high modulus carbon is something you probably see on most carp rod descriptions. It's something that manufacturers like to bandy around. Basically, modulus is a measure of elasticity, basically, and the higher that your modulus value is, then the stiffer the rods are, and they're also lighter the higher you get. Now, it's difficult to measure exactly with each manufacturer having slightly differing standards, but a high modulus carp rod will be a stiff rod and it will be a slightly lighter rod. Now these have also got a low resin content. Now all carbon carp rods are a mixture of carbon fibers and resin to some degree. If you have more carbon and less resin, then what you get is a lighter rod. Now the downside to perhaps both of those things is they might be a bit more fragile, so you have to pay a bit more due care and attention with them, but you're effectively getting like a stripped out racing car of a carp rod. So it's fast and light, and that's what, certainly in the 3.5-pound test curve model that I'm holding now, aids casting ability. Now, if you like this video, then please do give us a big thumbs up, and also do go and check out our other social media channels. In addition to that, we've now got carpology competitions where from as little as 99p, you can stand the chance of winning some top-end fishing tackle. Click the link in the description below to see what competitions we're currently running. So finally, it's the fixtures and fittings, and I really like the way these rods have been furnished. You've got quite a long handle, which is good for getting some leverage when casting. It's a Japanese shrink rubber handle, and it's very, very thin. At the end, you've got a flared butt section. It's not one of those small little bulbous ones. It's actually fairly lengthy, probably about 1.5 inches, which is actually decent enough for grabbing hold of when you're powering through a cast. You've got a 3K carbon weave reel seat there. That's a slightly chunkier carbon weave. And then you've got this lovely, quite finessed 1K carbon weave throughout the blank. The blanks are pretty subtly done. The whippings are just gloss black. You've got 50mm butt rings throughout, anti-frap tip rings at the top, which help when casting, give you a bit of confidence that you're not going to tangle up. And I was thinking that Sonik giving their designers no budgetary constraints with making these rods is a bit like a mass manufacturer of cars like Ford or Subaru going rallying with things like the Focus ST or the Impreza. But when car manufacturers do that, then they tend to put massive wings on it and make it very clear that those are race cars. These are pretty subtle rods. The only sort of hint that these are range toppers are the two sort of gold bits that bookend the Tournos XD logo at the bottom. So very much in keeping with modern carp trends, nice and subtle. Until you pick them up, that's when you realise that these are pretty special rods, very lightweight, very good at casting. If it was up to me, I'd have the 3.25, and I think it would probably cover me for almost all of my fishing.